It's funny to think back on those early days. I was 23, fresh out of college, and felt like I had my future figured out. I had just landed my first job as a software developer, and life was simple work, home weekends with friends. No real surprises. I didn't have big dreams, just a steady path ahead, which felt enough at the time. I had no idea how different my life would become when I met Adeline. It happened one summer evening at a friend's barbecue. You know, the kind: burgers burning, someone's dog running around, drinks being spilled. I was by the grill when she came up to me smiling like she knew something I didn't. Planning your escape? Huh, she said, nodding at the grill. Escape? I asked, confused. Yeah, you've got that look like you're plotting your way out of here, she said, her voice playful but sharp. I laughed it off. I guess I am escaping the burgers, they might be a fire hazard. She laughed too, and that was it. We spent the rest of the evening talking. She was spontaneous, full of stories, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Excitement. Adeline wasn't like anyone I'd met. She made even the simplest things feel interesting. She told me about her job and marketing, her love for travel, and how she never planned anything. We kept in touch, and a few weeks later we started dating. It happened quickly. Adeline would suddenly text me, "Road trip, leave work early, we're going to the beach, or found this great restaurant." I made a reservation, I'd go along. Of course, I was the practical one, making sure we had enough gas, checked the weather, and stuck to a budget she brought. The adventure, I provided the steady hand. And it worked. Adeline and I got married after 3 years. It wasn't a big ceremony, just a small gathering of family and close friends. Afterward, we bought our first house, a small 2-bedroom place in a quiet suburb. It wasn't perfect, but it had potential. A backyard for our future plans, a cozy living room for movie nights. For a while, it felt like everything was falling into place. I'd come home from work, and Adeline would be in the kitchen, maybe baking or making tea, telling me about her day. She always had something to say. She worked in marketing, and there was always drama. "You won't believe what Karen did today," she'd say, launching into a recap of the chaos at work. I didn't mind. She made everything interesting. Even the most mundane details, I'd listen, nodding as she told me who said what, who did what, and who was upset. Sometimes I'd ask about her thoughts, but she'd just brush it off, saying, "It's just work stuff." She was the storyteller and I was the listener. I didn't mind. It felt right. One night, she leaned in, excited. "Guess what? I think Sarah's getting a promotion. Can you believe that?" Then she'd go on telling me all the office politics. I'd smile and nod, always eager to listen. I never minded being her steady partner. That was the dynamic between us. She had the stories and I had the patience to listen. We never had children, and it wasn't a decision made out of any rush. It was more about timing. I guess Adeline wasn't in a hurry, and neither was I. We both agreed that we wanted to be more financially stable before taking that big step. We wanted to be ready for it. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of where we were in life. We were comfortable, and we talked about it, about waiting until we were really prepared. And so we did in a lot of ways. Things felt perfect. I'd get up, go to work, return home, and repeat. Our lives had a rhythm. We had our date nights, usually something simple like dinner at one of our favorite restaurants or watching a movie at home. Nothing extravagant, but it was enough for a while. I thought it was the kind of life everyone dreams of: comfortable, predictable, and stable. But looking back, I wonder if I became too comfortable. You see, it's easy to fall into a pattern when things feel stable. Maybe I stopped paying attention to the small things, the little details that used to matter, like how Adeline seemed to thrive on attention. I don't think I noticed at first. It wasn't a big deal. Not at the beginning. She was always the life of the party, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately draw people to her. I used to admire that about her. I loved how she lit up a space, how people just gravitated toward her energy. But somewhere along the way, I started to take that for granted, I guess. I assumed it would always be there. This warmth, this vitality. We had disagreements from time to time, like any couple sometimes. It was about little things. Me forgetting to take out the trash, or her leaving her shoes scattered around the house. But nothing major. Nothing that ever felt like it could shake the foundation of our relationship. It was all small stuff, and I was fine with that. After all, we were solid, right? I was convinced we were. But relationships, I've learned, have a way of seeming perfect on the outside, while cracks quietly form beneath the surface. Those cracks can expand if you're not paying attention, and before you know it, the foundation you thought was solid starts to crumble. I didn't see it coming. Not at the time. I thought we were building something strong. But sometimes life has a way of proving you wrong. That's when Adam came into the picture. I remember the day he moved in next door. The elderly couple who lived there had downsized and moved to Florida, and in their place, Adam, a 28-year-old personal trainer, moved in. He was younger than most of the other neighbors, and from the moment he stepped onto the scene, it was clear he was different, fit, confident, and undeniably attractive. The kind of guy who could turn heads without even trying. He had that movie star physique, the kind that made people do double takes. I can't say I didn't notice it, but I wasn't worried about it. At first, he was always outside doing something, washing his car, mowing the lawn, installing a pull-up bar in his yard. And there was always a reason. For him to be shirtless, he practically lived outside, and the neighborhood buzzed with the sight of him. Like everyone had something to say about the new guy. Adeline, of course, noticed him right away. How could she not? I remember the first time we met Adam. It was a Saturday morning, and we were out in the yard. He walked over to introduce himself, and of course he was charming, the kind of guy who could talk to anyone and make them feel like an old friend. I stood there smiling and nodding, barely able to get a word in as he and Adeline hit it off. She asked him where he was from, what he did for a living, how he liked the neighborhood. It was like they had known each other for years. I wasn't bothered by it. At first, Adeline was outgoing. She spoke to everyone. It didn't matter if it was the mailman or the guy at the hardware store. She was always friendly, always striking up conversations. I thought nothing of it. She was just being herself, and I was content with that. She was never one to shy away from a chat, especially with someone new. But as I stood there watching them talk, I couldn't help but notice how easily she slipped into the conversation with him. There was this effortless ease between them, like they had a natural rapport. It was nothing out of the ordinary, but something about it tugged at the back of my mind. Maybe it was just my own insecurities playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about how she engaged. With him, I shook it off. It wasn't anything to worry about, not yet anyway. Looking back, I can see the subtle shifts that started to happen. Though at the time, I brushed them off. It all began with these casual talks. Adeline always found a reason to step outside, and it seemed harmless at first. Small tasks, like getting the mail, watering the plants, and putting out the trash. But those brief chores would always lead to these 10 or 15-minute conversations with Adam. I remember one evening, I got home from work and saw them talking in the driveway. Adeline was holding a basket of laundry, making her way to the garage, and Adam was leaning casually against his car, laughing at something she had said. When I stepped up, both of them turned. To me, Adeline quickly smiled as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Oh hey, Tiago, microman," she said, pretending everything was just fine. Adam was just telling me about his new gym equipment. I nodded, trying to brush off the odd feeling creeping up. It was no big deal, right? Adam was a good guy. I trusted Adeline. It didn't stop there, though. A few weeks later, Adeline decided to bake cookies, something she hadn't done in months. I didn't think much of it until I saw her walking across the yard with a dish of cookies in hand, heading towards Adam's place. "Just being neighborly," she remarked, as if that explained everything. I shrugged it off. It wasn't unusual for Adeline to bring over brownies or something to the neighbors. Still, something about it felt different. But it wasn't until she bought that new set of bright, fitted leggings and a matching top that I really started to notice the shift. I raised an eyebrow when I saw her putting it on. One morning, "You thinking about starting to jog again?" I asked, trying not to sound too curious. "Yeah," she said, smoothing the fabric down just to get back into shape. I didn't question it. Adeline had gone through those fitness phases before, where she'd get really into it for a month or two before losing interest. But this time felt different. The timing was perfect. Adam was jogging nearly every morning. I'd see him out there, headphones in, doing laps around the street. The next morning, I saw them again. Adeline was stretching on the sidewalk, and Adam was there showing her how to avoid shin splints. I drove by without saying anything, just a quick wave. But something about that scene stuck with me. It felt off, like I was watching something I shouldn't have been around. The same time, I noticed Adeline's phone habits starting to change. She was always on her phone, scrolling through social media or texting her friends, but now she seemed more wary. Whenever I'd walk into the room, she'd quickly lock her screen or flip her phone over, almost like she didn't want me to see something. One night I was sitting on the couch, glancing over at her as she scrolled through Instagram. When I looked closer, I saw Adam's name at the top of her screen. She quickly swiped past it, but I had already seen enough to know what she was looking at. His profile. I didn't say anything right away, but when I finally did ask her, she brushed it off. "Oh, I was just checking out his fitness posts," she explained almost too casually. "He has some good workout advice." I wanted to believe her, I really did. So I let it go, even though a little voice in my head was saying something wasn't right. But then one day I was working in the garage when I heard laughter coming from the backyard. I stepped outside and saw them again. Adeline and Adam standing by the fence, laughing about something. Adeline was holding an iced tea, and Adam was animatedly telling a story, his hands waving as he spoke. Adeline waved at me, her smile wide as if nothing unusual had occurred. It was starting to feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but something about the situation didn't sit right with me. It was in the way Adeline spoke about Adam. It wasn't what she said, but how she said it. "Oh, Adam's thinking about getting a dog." Or Adam recommended this great protein shake. Every mention of him seemed to carry a little more weight. Then there were the glances when we'd be outside and Adam was nearby. I'd catch her stealing little glances his way. It was subtle, but once you notice, you can't unsee it. I hadn't said anything. Part of me refused to believe there was anything to worry about, but another part of me couldn't ignore the pattern. I stayed quiet for now, but I began watching more closely, wanting to see it with my own eyes. If something was happening, then came that Saturday morning. It was so normal. At first, I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table scrolling. Through the news, Adeline was still in bed, a usual weekend morning. The house was quiet, just the sound of the coffee machine humming for a moment. Everything felt peaceful. An hour later, Adeline walked into the kitchen looking like she'd just woken. Up in her pajamas, hair tangled, phone in hand, she sat across from me. I could tell something was off right away. She fidgeted, avoided eye contact, her gaze fixed on her phone. "Are you okay?" I asked. Setting my phone down, she nodded quickly, then shook her head. "Actually, no," she sighed. "We need to talk." Those 4 words, never a good sign. My stomach tightened, but I tried to stay calm. "All right," I said. "What's going on?" Adeline hesitated, looking around the room like she was searching for the right words. Finally, she looked at me, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it." She began, her voice tense. "I think I have feelings for Adam." I thought I misheard her what I asked, leaning in, my voice shaky. "You're what?" She bit her lip. "I didn't mean for it to happen, it just happened. I've been spending time with Adam and I feel this connection, and now I'm confused." Confused, that word hit harder than anything she wasn't asking for forgiveness, just explaining how she felt. No guilt, no real remorse, just confusion, like it was an unexpected puzzle. I stared at her, trying to make sense of it. Was she saying she wanted to leave? Was this a confession or just an explanation? I couldn't tell, and that made things worse. "So what does this mean?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you saying you're done with us?" Adeline shook her head rapidly. "No, not necessarily," she replied, her words coming out in a rush. I don't know what I want right now. I love you, Tiago. I do. But I can't stop thinking about him, and I need to figure out what these feelings mean." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. We had built a life together, been through years of ups and downs, and now she was telling me she wasn't sure if she wanted to be with me anymore. It felt surreal, like I was in a dream that I couldn't wake up from. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands and hold my voice steady. "So what are you saying, you want to take a break?" She hesitated, then nodded, barely a whisper. "Kind of," she said, her voice unsure. "I need time to figure things out. I was thinking maybe I could take a month to spend some time with Adam and see if there's something real there. If it doesn't work out, then we can focus on ourselves." I blinked, stunned. By her audacity, "You're serious?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, not even framed as a question. Adeline nodded her gaze, begging me to understand. "I know it sounds crazy, but I don't want to throw away what we have without being sure. I don't want to live with regrets." Regrets. The word stuck in my mind like a splinter. She was talking about regrets as if she were the one putting everything on the line, as if my feelings were secondary to her life-changing decisions. I sat. Just there, a mix of rage and disbelief was bubbling inside me, but I stayed silent. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how deeply this was affecting me. Part of me wanted to yell, to tell her how selfish she was being, but another part, the calmer, more calculated side, told me to let her dig her own hole. "All right, go ahead. If that's what you think you need, then do it." Adeline blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Wait, really? Sure, what will I make you live with a regret?" I replied, shrugging as if it were no big deal. "Do what you need to do. We both have our lives, and we both have the right to decide about our future. Like you are planning your future, I will plan mine." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and uncertainty. "I just think it's the best way to figure out where my heart is," she admitted cautiously. I didn't respond immediately inside. I was already done the moment she mentioned spending a month with another man. Something inside me switched off. But I didn't want to show my cards just yet. If she was willing to throw our marriage away for a dream with a neighbor, I was curious to see just how far she would go. Adeline let out a relieved sigh, as if she had just been granted permission for something she'd been waiting for. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "I know this is a lot to ask, but I really believe it's the right thing for us." Adeline said, her voice shaky but determined. I stood up and grabbed my coffee mug, pulling my hand away from hers. "You are absolutely right. It is the best thing for us. Thanks to planning this," I repeated. She said nothing after that, just sat there, no doubt contemplating the fact that I wasn't arguing or fighting back. But within I was already planning. I had no idea where this would lead. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to come to a conclusion. For the next few days, Adeline packed a modest bag. She told me she'd be staying with Adam, and she made it sound casual, as if it were just a temporary arrangement. It didn't seem to register with her that I wasn't asking questions or expressing resistance. I wasn't mad. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. And I was already planning my next move when she left. The house felt different. Not empty, just quieter. Like someone had turned down the volume. On my life, I stood in the living room staring at the door. Her duffel bag was gone, but my thoughts were heavy, pulling me in every direction. I expected anger or sadness. But all I felt was a strange peace, as if the weight of pretending everything was fine had been lifted from my shoulders. I strolled into the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and stood there trying to process what had just happened. My wife, whom I had been with for years and expected to spend my life with, had left to figure things out with the guy next door. If it hadn't been my life, I would have assumed this was some insane TV drama, but it was real. The first several days felt odd. I began noticing little things. She'd left behind her favorite cup on the kitchen counter, a pair of shoes near the entrance, and a blanket thrown over the back of the couch. I thought about moving them, clearing her things out to make the place feel more like mine, but I didn't. I left them where they were, not because I missed her, but because I didn't want to waste any more energy on her. I threw myself into work. I took on extra assignments to fill my schedule, staying late. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want to return home to an empty house when I wasn't working. I spent time at the gym. I'd never been a regular gym goer before, but there was something oddly fulfilling about pushing myself physically, like I could sweat out all my stress, all the confusion and all the frustration that had built up over the last few days. Friends began to notice something was off. A few of them asked why Adeline wasn't around, but I kept it vague. "She's staying with a friend for a while," I said, trying to sound casual. I wasn't ready to dive into the real story, yet we have mutual friends, and I did not want them to talk to my soon-to-be ex-wife that I am planning to leave her. I wasn't just a backup plan in case her affair with Adam didn't work out. My father was the only one I spoke the truth to a few days after. Adeline left. I called him. The first thing he asked was, "What's wrong?" He'd always been able to read me even over the phone when I told him what had happened. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then he said something that stayed with me. "Well, son, I hate to say it, but it sounds like you're better off without her." I expected him to be more furious, to ask more questions, but then he added, "If she doesn't know your worth, why should you wait around for her to figure it out?" That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Last few days I had spent so much time trying to understand Adeline's decision, trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. But in that moment, I realized something I hadn't considered. What I deserved that night. I sat in the darkened living room staring at the wedding photo on the mantle. We looked so certain in that moment, so sure of our future. Now it just reminded me of everything that had gone wrong. By the end of the week, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for Adeline anymore. I was going to take control the next day. I called the divorce attorney. Sitting in his office felt surreal as I detailed the situation, keeping my voice steady despite the disbelief I still felt. The lawyer nodded and replied, "You are well within your rights to file for divorce. This falls under irreconcilable differences, and if we push it can be abandonment as well." Hearing those words made it all clear. Irreconcilable differences. Adeline and I weren't on the same page anymore, and maybe we never had been. The cracks were there all along now. I could see it. We were done. The lawyer walked me through the process, and by the time I left, I felt strangely relieved I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life at home. I began making small preparations. I transferred money to a second account, just in case things got ugly. I walked through the house mentally, separating what was mine and what was hers. I didn't touch her things yet, but in my mind I was already picturing the house without her. Days turned into weeks, and I grew accustomed to the silence. It wasn't as bad as I expected. The quiet was a relief, free from her constant chatter or the petty disagreements about household chores. Meanwhile, I started hearing about Adeline and Adam. A neighbor saw them at the park, looking cozy, another at a cafe downtown. I smiled and nodded when I heard, but inside, I was filled with rage and pity. She had thrown everything away for a guy who wasn't even worth it. Adam wasn't the settling down type, and I knew Adeline would learn that the hard way. By the third week, I stopped checking my phone for her texts. If she wanted to communicate, she could reach out. But I wasn't waiting anymore. One night, while cleaning out the garage, I came across a box of old photos from when Adeline and I first met. For a moment, I felt a stab of sadness, remembering how happy we had been. But then, I remembered all the red flags I had ignored over the years, all the times I put her needs first without realizing it. I sighed, closed the box, and moved it away. It wasn't that I didn't care about the past, it was just time to let go. Holding on to those memories wouldn't change anything. It was time to move forward. I didn't need those memories. Adeline decided to make her spectacular reappearance almost exactly a month ago today. I hadn't heard anything from her during her brief trial with Adam. The few texts she sent were vague at best. "Hope you're doing okay, or we'll chat when I get back." She didn't even try to keep me updated or pretend she was torn about her decision. It was as if she had already dismissed me as Plan B. By this point, I had ceased caring. I wasn't waiting by the door for her to come to her senses. I wasn't pacing the house, wondering what she and Adam were doing. I had filed for divorce, and my lawyer had already begun drafting the paperwork. As far as I was concerned, the marriage was over, but I didn't tell her that. Just yet, when she walked through the door, nothing seemed to have changed, at least for her. She had her bag draped over her shoulder, her hair done nicely, and a confident expression on her face like she'd just returned from a trip and was expecting me to roll out the red carpet. "Hey," she said, placing her luggage by the door. "I'm back." I was sitting on the couch flipping through the channels, barely glancing up. She paused as if expecting more of a response when I didn't jump up or ask how it went. She walked over and perched on the arm of the couch. "We should talk, Tree," she said quietly, carefully. I turned toward her and muted the TV. "All right," I replied, crossing my arms. "Talk." Adeline smiled, the kind of smile she used when she was trying to make things better. "I've done a lot of thinking," she told me, her voice soft but measured. "I've realized some things about myself, about us, about what I want." I simply nodded, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath, as if she were about to deliver an impassioned speech. "I care about you, Tiago. I really do. And I think we can work through this. I think we can rebuild what we have rebuilt." She said it like it was as simple as repairing a leaking faucet. I didn't say anything, just looked at her, letting the silence stretch. She was perplexed by my lack of response. "But she pushed on Adams, a great guy," she remarked, and I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing at how casually she mentioned him. But I realized he's not what I need. He's fun, sure, but he's immature. He doesn't have the stability that you have. And I think I was just caught up in the excitement of it all. There it was, her big revelation. She tried out the shiny new toy and decided she liked the old one more. "Uh-huh," I replied, my voice cool. Adeline blinked, looking as if she expected more of a reaction. "I know I've hurt you," she murmured, reaching out and touching my arm. "But I really believe we can get past this. We've been through so much together. Tiago, we have history that's not something you just throw away." I let her continue, letting her unload all her perfectly practiced phrases about love, forgiveness, and starting over. I didn't interrupt, just let her talk. When she finally finished, I stood up and walked over to the kitchen counter. I unlocked a drawer, pulled out the divorce papers my lawyer had sent over, and placed them on the table in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her smile fading. "Divorce papers?" I explained simply, her face turned pale. "You're kidding." "Jens," she exclaimed, releasing a frightened laugh. "Nope," I replied, leaning against the counter with my arms folded. "I'm not kidding." For a moment she just stared at the papers like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she glanced up at me, her eyes wide. "You're divorcing me?" "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "Like I said, when you left, you made your choice to explore, and I made my choice to explore, and I find you not suitable for my future, and besides, I'm not interested in being your second choice." Adeline. Her face shifted, the shock giving way to something much darker, anger. It happened so fast, I could almost see the heat rising in her second choice. She demanded, her voice rising. "That's not what this is." I was confused. "Tiago, I needed time to figure things out." She continued, her voice shaking, "And in the process you decided to test the waters with another man." I added calmly, "You left. You walked out on our marriage, and now you're back because it didn't work out with him. Do you honestly think I'm just going to take you back, like nothing happened?" Adeline opened her mouth to argue, but then stopped, her face growing red. "It's not like that," she responded, her voice quivering. "I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't want to stay and resent you." I thought she trailed off, her gaze darting around the room. "That is exactly what I am doing right now. I am dumping you so that I do not rest for the rest of my life. You thought you could have it both ways," I said, finishing her thought for her. She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "You're making a mistake, Tiago. We can fix this. I know we can." "No, it's not a mistake." I have thought about it carefully, I replied firmly, my voice unwavering. We can't. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a brief moment, I almost felt the tug of empathy, but I quickly dismissed it. I had already made up my mind. The remainder of the conversation felt like a blur. She tried to argue to guilt, tripped me into changing my decision. She talked about our history, our home, even the possibility of starting a family someday, but none of it mattered. None of it was enough to make me forget what she'd done. Finally, she stormed out of the house. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where she had just been, feeling nothing. No sadness, no regret, no second thoughts, just relief. Later that night, I called my lawyer to inform him that Adeline had seen the paperwork. He asked, "How'd she take it?" "Not great," I remarked, smirking. "Do you want to give her time to process, or should we move forward?" "Move forward," I instructed, without hesitation. It wasn't easy standing up to Adeline, but it was the right thing to do. She had treated me like a backup plan in case her fling didn't work out, and if she thought I'd just accept that she clearly didn't know me as well as she imagined I knew, she wouldn't give up easily. Adeline wasn't the type to walk away from a confrontation, especially one in which she thought she was losing. Hardly had I sat down when my phone buzzed with a text from her. "This isn't over." I stared at the message for a moment before locking my phone and throwing it on the couch. She was right. It wasn't over, not yet, but it would happen soon enough. The following several days were eventful, to say the least. Adeline arrived unannounced the next evening, beating on the door as if she were attempting to break it down. "Tiago, open the door," she exclaimed, her voice frantic. I opened, it keeping a bland attitude. "What do you want, Adeline?" She rushed by me without hesitation, storming into the living room as if she still lived there. "We need to talk," she stated, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "You can't just file for divorce without giving me a chance to fix things." I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms, my expression neutral. "You had your chance," I replied quietly. "You made your decision when you left. Okay, tell me, what will you do to fix this marriage, considering the fact that you left your husband for another man? How will you make me believe that in the future you will not leave me again for another man?" She stood there silently, then said, "We can go to counseling." I shot back, "And do what? Listen to a dumb woman tell me that I need to forgive you and move on? Besides, that would involve me doing something. What will you do on your own to fix this? I'll do anything for you. Please give me a chance," she begged. "Okay, make a time machine, go back in time and undo everything." "Poor," I said, mocking her. "That's not fair," she responded, her voice rising with frustration. "I didn't leave to end our marriage. I left to figure things out, to make sure I wasn't making a mistake by staying." I couldn't help but laugh, dry and bitter. "And in doing that, you proved you didn't value what we had. You don't test a marriage by running off to someone else, Adeline. That's not how it works." She paused, pacing, and turned to face me, her eyes blazing with frustration. "I was confused," she remarked, her voice shaking. "I didn't know what I wanted, but I know now. I want us, Tiago. I want to fix this too late." I replied, my tone strong and final. "You don't get to come back now, just because things didn't work out with Adam." Her face contorted in rage, and she aimed a finger at me. "You're being petty," she said, her words sharp. "You're throwing away everything we built over one mistake." I shook my head, maintaining my composure. "It wasn't just one mistake, Adeline. It was a series of choices you chose. To flirt with Adam, you chose to prioritize your feelings for him over our marriage, and then you chose to leave. Those weren't accidents. They were decisions." She opened her lips to argue, but then stopped, her shoulders sagging for the first time. She appeared defeated. "What am I supposed to do now?" she inquired quietly. I sighed, feeling a hint of pity for her, despite everything she had done. "That's not my problem anymore." I explained, "You made your choices now. You have to live with them." She waited for another minute, looking like she wanted to say something else. But then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the house, following that the divorce proceedings went fast. Adeline attempted to drag things out at first, perhaps, expecting I would change my mind. She even tried to play the victim in front of our mutual acquaintances, accusing me of being cold and cruel when I told my father about the scenario. He let out a low whistle. "She's got some nerve." "Jer," he commented, shaking his head. "But I'm proud of you, son. Standing your ground isn't easy, but it's the right thing to do." Adeline's stalling tactics proved ineffective. My lawyer was sharp, and the proof of her leaving for Adam made things quite clear. Adeline tried to plead for spousal support, claiming she had given up her profession for the marriage, but the judge didn't buy it. In the end, we reached a reasonable deal. She received a modest sum of money and some of the furniture she'd chosen, but I kept the house and most of my savings. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than I had anticipated. The final hearing was bittersweet. Sitting in that courtroom signing the documents that would officially end our marriage felt strange. I glanced across at Adeline a few times. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her lawyer handed her a pen, and for a brief moment I thought she might refuse to sign, but eventually she scribbled her name at the bottom of the sheet. Completing the transaction after the hearing, she approached me in the hallway. "Tiago?" She spoke softly, just above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." I stared at her, hoping to recognize the person I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But all I saw was someone I used to know. "I know you are." I replied, my voice steady but firm. "But sorry, doesn't fix this." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she reached out to hug me, but I pulled aside, not giving in. "Take care of yourself, Adeline," I whispered, starting to walk away. I could hear her sniffle behind me, but I didn't look back. Occasionally I'd hear tidbits about Adeline through the grapevine. Adam had obviously moved on to someone else. Shortly after she returned to me, according to one mutual friend, she was now living with a relative and figuring out her next moves. I didn't feel satisfied hearing about her problems, but I also didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her decisions, and now she was dealing with the consequences. One day I ran into her at the supermarket. We locked eyes briefly, and I could see remorse written all over her face. She gave me a little hesitant wave, but I simply nodded and moved past. There was nothing more to say. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled the situation. Adeline believed she could have it both ways: go pursue her feelings for someone else, and then return to me if it didn't work out. But life doesn't operate that way. I've learned a lot about myself throughout this process. I realize now that I deserve someone who cherishes me and doesn't consider me as a last resort, and if that individual is out there, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. For the time being, my primary goal is to reconstruct my life on my own terms. Adeline's trial run with Adam may have been her way of gaining clarity, but it was a wake-up call I didn't realize I needed. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.